Alrighty, so welcome back. In this video, we're talking about how we actually figure out what videos to make or products to make or TikToks or Instagram or whatever your creative thing to make, how we figure that out by using the idea of a target audience rather than the idea of a niche. Now, we spent absolutely ages in the previous lesson talking about hedgehog concept and core focus and the house model, but really the way we actually figure out what is the sort of content we want to make is by thinking in terms of a target audience instead. And so we know big picture, for our business, we help people live their best life by creating inspiring educational content. And I know that the sorts of topics that I generally care about, what are the elements of a good life? Well, it's 5 things: health, wealth, love, happiness, and impact. But I wouldn't say it's my niche to make content around health, wealth, love, happiness, and impact. Those are maybe content buckets within my niche, which is kind of helpful to know. But really when I think about my niche, I'm thinking of it in terms of a target audience. And when we have students in our YouTuber Academy, they generally find it easier to think of their niche in terms of the audience member who is watching your stuff, rather than in terms of an abstract list of topics. And when it comes to identifying your target audience, the problem that basically all creators that I've ever spoken to about this and that I've coached through the process have is that they're trying to be too broad. We think that I don't want my target audience to be too specific, because if it's too specific, my video is not going to appeal to enough people. But there is a bit of a paradox of target audiences, which is that in a way, the more specific you can make your target audience and the more specifically targeted you can be to that one person who makes up your target audience, or 2 or 3 people, weirdly, the more broadly appealing your content is going to be, and the better it's going to be for a larger number of people. And there's a story from Tim Ferriss, who famously wrote The 4-Hour Workweek, that illustrates this really nicely, because he talks about how he was really struggling to write his book when he wasn't thinking of the target audience. He was like, okay, I know what I want to write about. I know what the niche is. I know that I want to write about this idea of the 4-hour workweek. I know I want to talk about geo arbitrage. I know I want to talk about the 80-20 rule, Parkinson's law, all these different productivity things. And I know I want to write about how people can liberate themselves from their full-time job by building streams of passive income. But he sat down to write it and he didn't know what to write. He couldn't make any progress. And the thing that allowed him to make progress with actually writing the book was opening up a Gmail email compose window, putting in the email address of one of his friends, and then he wrote his first draft of the book as if he was writing an email, and he was actually writing an email to just one of his friends. And what he said in interviews afterwards when he spoke about this writing process, and if you're not familiar, the 4-Hour Workweek has become a massive bestseller, was on the New York Times list for 10 plus years. What he said was that focusing it on just speaking to one person made a massive difference in how well the book did and how easy it was for him to write it. And so just like writing for a single person makes your book better, aiming your videos or your content or whatever that thing is that you're doing, aiming those at a single person is also going to just basically be guaranteed to make your content significantly better. Now, the question is, how do we actually find this target audience? And one exercise that I came across through a marketing coach that I worked with called Billy Brose is this idea of the bridge of transformation. Now, here's how the bridge of transformation works. Basically, we have this cliff and we have this other cliff. And this cliff is the status quo. And we have our target audience member who is somewhere on this cliff. And on the other end of that cliff is the new life. It's the new person they are becoming. It's the new whatever that they are, it's the transformation that they're experiencing as a result of our content, whether that's entertainment, education, inspiration, or anything else. And then in the middle, we have the bridge of transformation. And the bridge of transformation is what is the thing that takes the person from the status quo to this point when they have this new life. Now, crucially, what this means is that we need to understand 3 things. We need to understand, number 1, who is this person and what is their status quo? We need to, secondly, understand what is this new life that this person wants at the end of this bridge. And number 3, we need to understand how we can be the bridge. What is the transformation that our content is going to allow this person to experience? So let's start with number 1, identifying the target audience. And here we're really trying to answer that question of who is that one person? Who is the one person that would watch our content and fall in love with our content? Who is the one person that we could have the most impact on? Who is that one person who is going to shout our name from the rooftops and say, oh my God, have you seen Ali Abdaal's YouTube channel? It's literally the best thing I have ever seen in my life. Now, just by targeting that one person, like I said, it doesn't mean it's only that one person is going to watch our stuff, but it means our message is focused, it's targeted at that one person. It's almost like, and here's a metaphor that a podcast marketing coach that we worked with 2 weeks ago used. It's like when you're thinking of of a concept for your podcast as well, you want to think of it like an aperture of a camera lens, where it's like a very narrow aperture, and you need the light to go through the aperture. And once it comes through the aperture, it can then spread out, and you can get the nice bokeh, and you can get the nice camera quality and all that stuff. but you need a very, very small aperture to go through. And it's like that small aperture is your target audience persona. It's like your content is going through your target audience persona and then is being shown far and wide. And maybe other people will discover your content, but really the message is being laser focused in on that one person, and then you're allowing it to disperse from them. So the question is, how do we identify who that person is? What are the sorts of questions we need to be asking about it? Now, there's a lot of different templates and stuff that you can use to ask yourself questions about your target audience. This is a very, very standard part of marketing. Anytime a product goes to market, before the product is even made, they're going to figure out who is the target audience for this product. But to save you some time, we have created for you a template, a worksheet, along with a Notion template that you can use to fill out the answers to this question. And so I want to share with you how our target audience on my channel has evolved over time. And when I first did this exercise was about 2 years ago, and this really helped me focus down on that, exactly who is that target audience member. And I came up with this idea of Medic Mo. This, Medic Mo is a 20-year-old medical student at Imperial College London. He lives in London. He's enjoying his degree. He finds it a bit tedious. He's kind of enjoying the university experience. He loves hanging out with friends, saving up to get an iPad. He'd quite like to take advantage of. He'd like to read more books. He'd like to start a business. He'd like to do this. He spends too much time watching Netflix, all that kind of stuff. I really went deep into figuring out, inventing this target audience persona, where, the questions I was asking myself was, who is the character? Who is Medic Mo? What does he want? Why can't he get what he wants? What is at stake if he doesn't get what he wants? And if he gets what he wants, what kind of transformation will he experience? And this is stuff that I first picked up on a course from Video Creators. I was working with a private coaching program with them, a chap called Tim Schmoyer and Delana Hunt. They're very good if you want to do a private course on YouTube and stuff. They're pretty decent. But they kind of talked us through this exercise and we worked on this target audience persona. And then it became genuinely really helpful as a way of figuring out how are we focusing our content. And so you'll see the amount of detail that there is in here. It's like probably, at least a few hundred words. And this is now a bit out of date, and we've updated the target personas for the book that I'm writing. And there are 3 of them rather than just 1 of them, because we're kind of cheating a bit and we want to have 3 target personas rather than just 1. But you kind of get the idea. We basically need to really be thinking about what are the exact details of this person in our target audience, because the more we know about this person, the more we can be that bridge of transformation to take them to their new life. Conveniently, we have made a Notion template for you that has this as well, where we've got some analysis questions. And these are the questions that I answered while working with a professional book editor and book writing coach to shape the proposal for my book, which ended up getting multiple 6-figure deals after answering all these questions. And so we're basically trying to create these personas. So age, education, profession, income. Do they have a side hustle? What's their relationship status? Do they have children? What hobbies do they have, if any? Where do they live? What stresses them out? What do they want out of life? What motivates them? Well, would they say life is going okay or not going great or going amazing? Do they volunteer with any political or social issues? What's their family background? How do they identify racially, ethnically, nationally? What's their gender identity? Are they religious or spiritual? What communities are they part of? What kind of media do they consume? What are their most closely held values? What's something they're struggling with right now? Can I help them with the struggle? How much do they know about my niche? Where do they learn about my niche, about my subject? How much does my niche or subject affect their life? What is their biggest pain point when it comes to my subject? And what are their attitudes towards the things that I want to create content about? These are like 26 questions that you want to try and answer as best as you can for your target audience persona. And if you don't know who that person is, that's totally okay. You can just make it up. Making it up is one option for doing this. But the other thing you can do is that you can make it up and then you can get a rough first draft of what you think your target audience persona is. And then you can even hop on phone calls with people in that target audience to find out more about their problems. Now, if you're at this stage and you're watching this Creatorpreneur course, you're probably at the Get Smart stage of the life as a creator. So you already have some sort of audience, fingers crossed, of some kind, unless you're just the sort of person that is watching this and you haven't yet started a YouTube channel or started a podcast and you're using this as a way of procrastination, which is totally fine as well. I get that there are some people that like to have all the information before they actually get started with doing the work. But either way, whether you have an audience or whether you don't have an audience, what you should do is you should make up this target audience persona, answer all 26 questions for this. If you really want to, you can have multiple target personas, and in that template down below, we've included the 3 personas that we have for the book that I'm writing and the details about Medic Mo for the videos that I've been making for the last 2 or 3 years. And then once you've got that rough first draft, you want to try and hop on phone calls. So post on your Instagram story, post on Twitter, post on whatever, send emails out. There's a creator that we spoke to called Rob Dial, who runs a podcast, and he's got a podcast called The Mindset Mentor. And crucially, when he was starting up his podcast, he wanted to figure out who is his audience? What are the things that they're struggling with that he could help them with? And so he sent out an email to his mailing list basically saying, hey, I want to have phone calls with people. And he had 80 phone calls, 80 Zoom calls with random members of his audience, and really just asked them a bunch of questions to figure out what are their issues? What can he possibly solve for them. And that will really help them figure out this thing of identifying the target audience, like who is the person that we're actually speaking to. And this is such a standard part of businesses these days, especially when it comes to the world of startups. Like the old school way of starting a business was going into your cave, making your thing, coming out of your cave and hoping that people would buy your product. These days, people have realized, because the whole tech startup thing has been going on for like 20 years, that is actually not a reasonable way of actually approaching building a startup. And the way that most startup founders do it now is they spend months, if not years, probably not years, but more like many months, actually speaking to their target audience, talking to people, interviewing people, having chats, and making sure that there is a market for the thing they're developing. And then once they've got an idea of what they might want to develop, before they build anything at all, they spend many more weeks or months interviewing people and asking them, would this thing sort of solve your problems? What more problems do you have? What is the sort of stuff that you're looking for in a solution that you'd pay money for? My brother, for example, runs a startup. They've been doing it for 2 years now. They've just raised 20 million at 100 million valuation, if that matters. But they spent their first 1 year of working on the product, not even working on the product. They spent their first year interviewing potential customers, going to finance companies, going to accounting companies, going to consultants who use Microsoft Excel, and figuring out what are the problems these guys have and how can we build a product to solve those things. And so this is such a standard part of business, and it's amazing how more creators don't do this. Like we create, in a way, when you're a creator, we always start out, we always kind of start out doing things for ourselves. Like, oh, I really enjoy making videos about X, therefore I'm going to make videos about X. And later on, when we switch to thinking of it as a business, it's very easy to neglect the speaking to your audience component. Comments are all well and good. Creators are always like, hey guys, if you want to see more videos from me, post in the comments down below, blah, 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 blah. But nothing beats actually hopping on a phone call or a Zoom call with an actual member of your target audience and understanding more about them, asking them these questions, asking them questions like what's keeping them up at night? Like what stresses them out? What is something that they wish they had in their life? What is something they wish they could pay money for? These are all the things that if we can identify it as best as we can for our target audience, it helps us know our customer, know our audience, and therefore we can serve them better. And the whole idea of treating our creative side hustle as more of a business is we're shifting away from focusing on ourselves, like what do I like doing, and more towards our audience. How best can I serve my audience? And if we use Gary Vee's methodology of jab, 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 right hook. Jabs are when we provide free, high quality value to our audience, and right hooks are when we ask for something in return, like a sale. And we want like a 25-to-1 ratio of providing free value to asking for a sale. And it's so much easier to provide value for our audience when we know who they are and what their problems are. So in conclusion, to identify your target audience, you want to fill out the worksheet down below. Please do take it seriously. I know it takes ages. It took me probably a month of going back and forth and procrastinating from it to actually fill in the entire target persona for my YouTube audience, Medic Mo. But then when I came around to doing it for the book and my writing coach was like, fill these 26 questions in ×3, I was like, you know what? I've seen the value of this on my YouTube channel. Of course, I'm going to do it for the book because it is so much easier to create content when you know who you are speaking to. That was one of the 3 parts of our journey to identifying a target audience to help hopefully figure out our niche. The next one is figuring out what is their new life. And again, this comes from making it up, but also from speaking to people. A lot of these new life questions are already incorporated into the worksheets that we're going to give you down below and in that Notion template, so you can fill them out anyway. And again, the idea here is just we're trying to imagine like what's the dream transformation that we have for our reader? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to imagine what is that dream transformation? What is that new life that they actually want? And one of the questions that I found really helpful for this when it came to writing my book was answering the question of what is the absolute best review that I could get from a reader? And so even if you're not writing a book, if you're working on YouTube channel or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you want to ask yourself, like, what is my dream target audience going to say about my content? How would they describe that content to a friend? And so I'm going to share this kind of dream book review with you. Write the dream review from the perspective of each of your characters. What are they getting from the book? So this is what my dream review for the book is going to be, and you can do something similar for your content. I don't normally read self-help books. Hell, I don't really have time to read books outside of work at all. But there was something about the premise of this book that caught my attention, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I was very pleasantly surprised. The book was actually pretty good. It helped me realize that the mindset I was approaching my work with was probably unhealthy and unsustainable, and even though I would have been okay continuing on this path, it wasn't really bringing me any happiness. I applied the Make It Fun principles in my day job as a respiratory medicine doctor, and even though it wasn't a magic bullet, the concepts did help me find ways to make the boring bits of my job more interesting. Now, whenever I find myself thinking, I hate doing this, I take a step back and find a way to make it more fun. And when it's more enjoyable, I'm more likely to actually do it and to actually do it well. Practically speaking, the books helped me do these things that I've been putting off for months and sometimes years. I used the strategies to finally get around to finishing 3 papers I've been procrastinating on, and my electronic portfolio is now up to date so that I'm in good standing with the General Medical Council. And after a few months of keeping my head above water, I found that I had enough time to work on a side project in the evening, a startup of sorts that helps junior doctors with their respiratory medicine exam. The way I'm approaching my work has also changed my family life for the better. Before, I was spending hours after work each day procrastinating from doing my clinic letters. Now I get them done in good time and head home to my wife and kids. And although my rota is still a nightmare, I've at least got a bit more time with the family in the evenings. So yeah, all in all, great read, and I've definitely taken some useful things away to apply to my life. Now, this might seem like navel gazing and just sort of like self-congratulatory kind of bullshit, but it's really not, because when you know what the dream review is from your target reader for a book, or when you know what you want your superfan, your ideal target audience, to say about your content when they speak to a friend, it really helps you focus down on like understanding what your niche is, understanding what sort of videos you want to make, what sort of blog posts you want to write, what sort of TikToks you want to make, any of that stuff. It's all really helped by having this dream review in mind. So that's another way that we can help figure out this question of what is my target audience new life, by thinking about the dream review. And now, having done that exercise number 1, identifying a target audience and their status quo, what their current problems are, and identifying their new life, where they want to be, now we can figure out how we can be the bridge of transformation and what are the different areas that we can potentially help them with. And this sort of thing makes it so much easier to figure out your niche and figure out what to make videos about, because now you're making them for a person and people have multiple problems. This is why I don't really like thinking of niches as a topic, that I'm making videos about Notion, right? Because making videos about Notion does not really help you to narrow down your content, and it means you get stuck in that niche and you're like, oh, but like now I want to make videos about Roam or Obsidian or about Todoist, and I can't because I'm the Notion person. I make videos about Notion. But if you think in terms of a target audience, maybe making videos about Notion and how they can apply the principles of software design or the principles of systems thinking to their life will be part of their bridge of transformation. But then once you've gone beyond Notion content, you can start thinking, okay, that same audience member who already loves my content, what other things are they struggling with? They're probably struggling with managing their to-do list. Notion's not very good for to-do lists. So why don't I make a series of videos where I talk about personal productivity or like knowledge management or things like that? What else is that person struggling with? Maybe they're a 35-year-old business consultant and they're struggling with getting more leads for their business. I can teach them how to use Notion for that thing, but then I can branch out a little in the content and give them more advice on how to do that particular thing that they're struggling with. And one thing that we often find ourselves coming back to when it comes to the target audience is it's generally easier to make content for an audience that you are very familiar with. So one of the questions we asked students on our YouTuber Academy, and this is also in the worksheet down below, is what are the different industries or groups that you are part of or that you identify with? So in my case, it would be YouTubers, creators, entrepreneurs, doctors, medical students, chess players, like amateur guitarists, amateur singers. Like these are all the different groups that I have some level of affinity with. And therefore, if my target audience is within those groups, it's so much easier to make content for them. And the other way I can think about it is, what are the problems that I had 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Can I make content that was suitable for myself a few years ago? And that often makes it very easy to identify the target audience, identify the new life that they want, and also to figure out what is the problems that I can solve while being their bridge of transformation. So that was a lot of spieling from my part, but hopefully this helped give you some idea of like these 3 different phases of identifying a target audience. We figure out their status quo, we figure out what their new life is, and we figure out what are the different areas in which we can potentially be their bridge of transformation. Again, this is just a theory lesson. All the practical stuff comes from actually doing the exercise in the worksheet in the interactive area down below. So please fill out those questions, and I promise they will give you some level of clarity about this age-old question of what the hell is my niche? Who is my target audience? So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.